As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner YouGov offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more.
But I want to do a quick couple of Tencent stories because, it's something we've been following. And the first story here is Nimo TV shuts global operations amidst Chinese sanctions. So this is a streaming platform owned by Huya, which is owned by Tencent. And they're having to shut down their operations, which are primarily in Brazil. Brazil's like the biggest market for Nimo TV. But basically what's happened is Huya, it says, has suffered several sanctions from the Chinese government, which include limiting gaming or streaming time, which we knew. But they so Tencent cut off funding to Huya's global project, Nimo TV. So Nimo TV will be shutting down. Unfortunately, it's going to affect like 200 employees, streamers, staff members, etc., just in Brazil, it says. And this was the birthplace of famous local streamers and organizations like Loud, is what they're saying. I've never personally used Nimo TV, but evidently it was very popular in Brazil. Do you guys remember when we talked about the Tencent story? I think it was last week. We said there were probably going to be more shutdowns. Interesting that Tencent's basically cutting off funding to a global play. Any thoughts on this? Jimmy, maybe start with you. I don't know if you have thoughts on this. I'm going to put this next to another Tencent story, but I want your comments on this first.
Yeah, last week we did talk about it. I think that was the prediction that there would be more coming. I remember saying when things were scaled back and businesses were resuming operations, great, it's nice growth, all that good stuff, but it's still China and it's still just, there's no assurances there. There's no security there if you're a business. Why would they shut down a streaming platform in such a popular market? As North Americans, I think we're NA centric, right? We think about North American esports and businesses, rarely thinking about, we're big fans of what the Middle East is doing here. I'm personally a big fan of what Brazil's doing in the space in South America in general. And obviously the default is to also go to Southeast Asia. Esports is a global business, right? We talk about it all the time with team models. Teams should be global businesses. These are not geographic, or rather, these are not restricted to geographic regions. These are brands that have identities and people that relate or don't relate. So, I think part of the guess with Tencent in last week was maybe they're redirecting or consolidating, or right, because they have a lot of properties that seemingly compete with other properties that they own. But with China, it's always hard because you don't know what the deeper story is and what isn't being told, right? And I feel like there's a lot of that here. I would personally would not have scaled back from my Brazilian operations.
Is Trovo the next victim maybe then? If you're going to cut off funding to a Nimo TV, why not a Trovo?
In the talks that I hope I'm not saying too much here. In the talks that you and I have had with Trovo, we were really impressed, I thought, by their 5-year vision and on what they are doing and positioning themselves to outlast Facebook and YouTube and other competitors in this space. I would say the opposite of that argument is more plausible, and that's that they are taking learnings from their other properties and perhaps reallocating those resources. Though I don't know if that's necessarily the play here. It's just hard to tell.
It seems like a mistake, right? To cut off something in Brazil, but not something in North America where it feels a little bit like that ship has sailed. Jeff, I don't know if you have thoughts.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. It is interesting. Maybe, it's just surprising what Tencent has done in the sense that they created all these competing entities and now they're kind of just killing them off one by one. And maybe that was their plan all along, is to have like a few different contingencies in place, a couple different bets on the board, and then see which management team was executing the best, and then kind of kill the ones that were falling behind. It's ruthless, but
very Darwinian or whatever.
It may actually have been the strategy. But Jimmy's point about Brazil is a great one. I mean, it's a great gaming region. I do think I read somewhere when some people were talking about this, maybe on Twitter, just around how Garena's actual streaming platform had done really well in Brazil. So maybe this one was kind of falling behind. That may have played a role into why Tencent shut it down. But yeah, it's a bit of a mystery.
Lindsay, are we overthinking this? Is it just that maybe being a streaming platform is really hard? It's such a massively competitive space, and unless you have the deepest pockets fully behind you, basically success is impossible. I don't know. Are we overthinking it, or?
It's so hard for me when it's in a non-US based market to tell if that's true or not. Because like when Caffeine went under, it was like, yeah, easy. But with this being a Chinese owned company in a South American market, I have no clue whether it's, some of the geopolitical issues, some funding issues, it wasn't the best one for the South American market issues. Like I would love to know from someone who's more of an expert in the area. And if anyone in chat is, please, like what the streaming landscape is there before I would feel confident saying that either we are completely overthinking it and this just wasn't a great platform and it went under, or there's something much bigger at play that we don't know about.
Yeah, I want to put this guys up against this other story quickly, which is like Tencent also shutting down this access to what they call foreign unapproved games. So they have this service that allows access to play foreign games, I guess games like on Steam or things like that. And it's a game speed booster app. So according to this article, a lot of the internet connections there are not fast enough to play some of the overseas titles. But I guess these are sort of like VPNs or something like that, glorified VPNs that allow Chinese to play these foreign games at faster speeds and access them. And Tencent is essentially shutting down this loophole. So there will be no way to access foreign games. And, the quote here is, "This is expected given the direction things are going. It is harder to be a gamer in China by the day," a Chinese internet user wrote on Weibo. So like no one seems surprised by this, but like everyone seems very accepting of this, which I guess there's not much else you can do in China. But like, is this the last for the fight? At what point do we just stop doing Tencent and Chinese gaming stories because we write off the whole market? Like, are we close? Jeff, how far are we from that in your mind? Like, put your analyst cap on. At what point do you write off the whole space because of things like this?
It's it's an interesting one. Hopefully not that close, because it's a huge part of, I think, the longer term growth story, just in terms of it's a massive region of potential gamers that I think the West has always looked at as, hey, these people have a voracious appetite for gaming. If we could get our games in there, boom, it's the next billion people to come into our game. So hopefully that's still an opportunity that's there. I think less so than us not talking about Tencent anymore. We might start talking about them in the context of them getting bigger in the West, which I think is something that we've seen them do a bit over the past year. More investments, obviously they own Supercell, they own Riot, so they're already here in a sense, but I think we're going to see them get even bigger here because they just have so much expertise and development capacity that they're not just going to retreat from the gaming market. They're just going to invest elsewhere, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. You think we're not that far, but I don't know how you build trust anymore, right? And we talked about this a little bit last week. It's even if you come back and they lift all the regulations and they make investments in the US in studios and they pretend that they're hands off. Like, I don't know how you can trust that, the whim of the Chinese government and Chinese regulation isn't just around the corner at any moment, and that death isn't around the corner at any moment. That's the fear, right? How do you build that trust back? Guys, I want to get to our lightning round because we have actually a good number of stories. Hang on, let me just read Angie's comment here. Angie says, would this be related to the Chinese time limits in games? Maybe they think smart kids are trying to arbitrage the time limit. I mean, Angie, no doubt this is related. I mean, that's just another piece of regulation, which we've talked about, sort of destroying the Chinese gaming market. And clearly people were getting around both limits and access through loopholes like the one Tencent just shut down. So, the more creative gamers in China get, I think the more they're going to crack down in the ways we're seeing. But no question that smart kids were finding all kinds of ways around limits and access.